Thank you everyone out there for joining today. So today we're going to talk about securing mobile and remote workers the Webex way. And today I have Willett Harris with me to talk about mobile security. I have Raj Kumar with me to talk about new granular controls. And I have Gautam Sridharan to talk about new space classification capabilities. But Willett, let's start with you. So our WebEx IT administrators have been clamoring for more granular policy enforcement tools and more integrations with what they're already using. So can you tell me how WebEx is solving for both?
Well, for one, WebEx Teams, now we're introducing WebEx Teams integrated with the Intune SDK. And our customers have been really asking for this. And so we'll be rolling that out this fall. And as part of that, you'll get more control within from an admin perspective, where you can take our WebEx into WebEx app and then pick it up straight from the App Store, and then basically tie your policies via the Intune admin console into the app. So you'll be able to do things like prevent copy and paste. You'll be able to do remote wiping. You'll be able to do require a minimum app version. All those things that help secure your data and helps data loss prevention, you will be able to now control, and it extends your opportunity for your bring your own device program, which many customers are looking for. That really allows our customers and their employees to use their own device and not get stuck carrying a company device as well as their own device, or just cut cost savings where you can step away from providing company provided devices and let your employees use their own devices.
That's awesome. And I think I heard that it also supports enterprise content management.
Yes, it does. So we'll also be it'll be also supported in the enterprise content management in a sense from ECM. So you'll be able to integrate with Office 365 and control content that way, and provide a more secure way to share documentation, and allow your users to easily access files while on the go.
Well, that's awesome. So what about customers who aren't using Intune? Is there something that they can use?
Yes, so for those customers, we do have two offerings for that. And one of those things is that, like most mobile devices, it comes with a standard set of app config support. And that allows the users to pick up the app from the App Store and then push their policies into the settings that we have exposed at the security layer. So you can simply automatically, based off whatever third-party solution you're using, Mobile Iron or MOS 360, you can set policies on that device by just setting the configurations that we have exposed. But we also have app wrapping, and app wrapping is really when we give you the binaries, and basically you can extend and add code to that, and still you can use it with any third-party solution as well. And with that, it still allows you to have more granular control from an app device and an application level as an admin. And you can pick up either one of those from the app wrapping solution from our Cisco MAM mobile application management community, or you can simply just pick up the app wrapping configuration from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store.
Of that, well, that's awesome. Well, Willette, thank you so much for meeting with us today. So I am going to move over to Raj. Raj, we're adding new granular tools that help customers because more transitioning to remote work. And one of those capabilities is blocking file share for groups. So can you tell us more about that?
Thanks, Frank. Yeah. So, as we know that most of the people now working from home, with the COVID situation, and what's happening with some enterprise organizations. So, they have employees or contractors for whom they may not want to allow file sharing because it opens the door for data leakage, right? So what we have done in WebEx is that we used to allow customer to control file sharing at organization level, so they can say, an org can or cannot share file or upload file, download files. Now they can also do at group level, right, where they can block file sharing at group level. An example was that if they want to allow all their employees to share file, but they may want to block contractors to share file to minimize data leakage. So now they can do so by not blocking file share at organization level, but go to a group, consulting group, or any other group, and do the block share. That way, collaboration still continues across organization, but certain set of people are not allowed for whatever reason customers choose not to allow file share. So now we have that capability available in our control hub for admin to manage the file sharing at group level.
Okay, and so how exactly do admins set up which groups are permitted to share what files and which groups aren't?
So Cisco Webex allow customers to sync their Active Directory via Cisco Directory Connector. What it means that they can decide to sync all the groups or some groups. When those groups are synced with Cisco Webex, in Control Hub, they get the visibility of all the groups they have synced, what their members are, so they can go back to Control Hub and see, they might know the group, they may not know the group, but Control Hub gives them the visibility to look for groups, search for group, and look at all the members, and accordingly decide which group I should apply file sharing control, for. And file sharing control is just one of many controls today, more to come. But the idea is that customer now can see groups in Control Hub. They can see group members in Control Hub. They can start applying setting at group level, and more settings gonna continue to come for them to manage at group level.
Well, that's all really cool. So how often or how do customers sync the Active Directory with Control Hub?
So it's a customer defined frequency, so they can decide how often they want to sync their Active Directory and membership changes. So it's entirely in their control. They can do every 24 hours, every week, but it's their decision to make. We just provide them that option.
Oh, that's awesome. So the control's all with the customer, that's just great. So what are some of the other features that admins can control for remote workers using this?
Yeah, some other features which are coming soon in a month or so is that, again, with the remote working, people are working from home, but they are customers primarily in financial sector or government sector and healthcare who doesn't want their people or users to share a file when they are not in their corporate network. What it mean by corporate network is that either connected through a VPN or they are in the office. That's when they want to allow file sharing. Again, file is the biggest data leakage vehicle, and that's what they want to control. So what we have done is that we have given the capability that they can define their network location by adding IP ranges, IP addresses of their network, and then they can turn on that network-based file sharing. So if anybody is sharing a file, if the file request is not coming from their corporate network, either via VPN or if they're in Office, then the file sharing will be blocked. So again, another control for them to manage their data leakage with file sharing. And it's an option available to customers, so not everybody has to do it. Anybody who is sensitive to this situation, like I say, banks and financial institutions, they can enable that in Control Hubs. It's self-service as well.
That's great. So I guess when this is ready, when we release this, how will customers be able to turn it on?
Customer just will go to Control Hub, and there is a section called Network Location, and they can go and bulk edit or individually edit list of IP ranges. Most of customers know their IP ranges. They enter that a few seconds, and then they turn a toggle on for network-based file sharing control. That's it, right? And we'll provide a lot of help articles and announce this feature so they are aware of what it is, what's expected, and how to turn it on or turn it off. So yeah.
Well, Raj, this is all really great news. So thank you so much for this. We're going to move over to Gotham now to talk about space classifications. So Gotham, space classifications can help enable companies to safeguard their content by labeling spaces and then having the creators or moderators define those spaces with some explainer text. So Can you give me some examples about the types of spaces that customers would be using?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, like you said, in the speakers before me, Willett and Raj emphasized the data loss prevention, right, with workers being remote today. And you think about data in an organization, right? And I give this analogy of data is like water. It just flows freely within the enterprise and outside the walls of the enterprise. And data is, in fact, like the new oil that powers the enterprise economy, right? So it's very important to make sure that data does not get compromised. And space classification is one of the features that allows an organization to sort of keep track of where the data is being produced, and then also, provide some safeguards and guardrails around that data in specific spaces, right? So it's accomplished in 3 different ways, actually. So number one, when users create a space, right, there's a very intuitive visual display that sort of alerts the user to the fact that, hey, you're actually producing data in a classified space, right? So be mindful, be careful about the information that you're putting in that particular space. And then we'll go into specific examples and use cases of what those scenarios might look like. The second thing we'll do, and we'll talk about it in a little bit detail also, is we're going to be exposing some of these attributes via events in our API. So these can be consumed by third-party, data loss prevention engines. We'll also have our own extended security pack, and Cisco Cloud Lock do the same. So then we can apply some policies, right, that are specific to certain spaces. And then thirdly, admins will also have the ability to, when they extract data, we will include metadata about these spaces, right? We will indicate whether a space is confidential or secret or, whatever the classification label is, so then they can focus some of their discovery searches specific to those spaces, yeah.
Okay, and who sets up the space classification?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually twofold, right? The first side is the end user who sets it up, which I just talked about. And maybe I could just jump into a quick demo at this point, Frank, so and make it a little bit easier to follow along here. Okay. Hopefully you're able to see my Webex Teams desktop.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an organization that I've set up for the demo that already has space classification enabled within Control Hub. And let me go ahead and just create a new space here and just kind of walk you through the flow. So I'll create a space. And let's suppose that we're going to be talking about this M&A financials for a company that we're considering acquiring here, right? So M&A financials of Acme. Obviously the information that we're going to be exchanging in the space is confidential, right? It's definitely not public, and we don't want, everybody in the space, right? So there's a sort of restriction that we need to put in the space. We also need to make sure that there are no external participants and whatever other concerns that we might have around, the data that's being shared in that space. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I will just say that this is a top secret space, right?
Okay.
And then I can go ahead and invite, other people in my organization. I won't do that yet, but I'll just go ahead and create the space now. So what you'll notice here is that in the general message composition area right here, right? So I talked about the simple but intuitive visual display to kind of alert the users to the fact that, hey, you're not in a public space, right? So that's the part that's kind of in your face and tells you, with the different color palette, right, compared to the normal spaces that, hey, you're in a space that's actually not public, right? And then there's also a little, if you notice here, and if I hover over here for a little bit, you'll find that there will be a tooltip that comes up. And this is also completely customizable by the admin. So when they create the classifications in Control Hub, and we'll talk about it in a little bit later also, they can put in help text, right? So we allow up to 100 characters. And so when they put that in, and that's kind of like a cue for the user, right? Like, hey, you're in a top secret space, and therefore, there are certain things that we expect within that space, right? And it's a certain behavior from the end user. So this is the admin's way of sort of coaching the user to say, hey, be careful. There's certain types of information or certain types of people that can't be added into this space.
Well, that's great. So basically, can our admins out there build policies around their space classifications?
Yeah, absolutely, Frank. So like I mentioned to you, right, in the second part, we're going to be exposing a set of APIs. And so that's what our third-party vendors and our DLP partners and our third-party vendors are going to utilize in order to start building the policies, right? These policies could be twofold, right? One, it could be like, hey, I know that we're going to be discussing confidential information, just like the demo that I showed you around, like, hey, we're going to be talking about the M&A financials for Acme acquisition, right? So then that space is perfectly fine for discussing confidential data or sharing data, right? So we want to ignore any of the policies for that particular space. However, there could be another space which is not confidential information, right? Where you're just sharing public information, and somebody drops a file, let's say about the Acme, M&A financial, and so that's something that the policy, engine on the other side can sort of catch, and then it can delete that particular file. Right? So those are the kind of policies that you can apply. And those could be specific to your organization where you could say, hey, if it's confidential, we can't have users from an external organization in the space. So there's a plethora of policies that you can apply depending on your particular business situation and use case. Yeah.
And this is all done by the space creator or the moderator, right?
Yeah, so we've built in some ownership and policies around it, right? So any user can basically, if the feature is enabled for the organization, then every user will be forced to designate a classification label for a space, right? However, let's say that you want to be very careful and you don't want to allow others the ability to change the classification, then you could take over moderation of that space. And for moderated spaces, only the moderators can actually change the classification of the space, right? And there's also another side to this where it depends on the ownership, right? So if I'm the owning org, users from the owning org are the only users that can change the space classification. And really what users can do is elevate the classification, right? So they can go from a lower level to a higher level classification. So, say for example, a very common data taxonomy could be public, classified, highly classified, and restricted, right? So if I start off a space as public, and then, for whatever reason, I'm going to start discussing some confidential information, I can increase the classification label to a confidential space. However, I can't go and downgrade it back to a public space, right? And the rationale behind it is because once you've said that a space is confidential and you start transacting confidential data in that space, if you downgrade it to a public or a lower level, then you've got to retrospectively go back and remove all of the data in that space, right, to make sure that it actually is public and there's no violations in that space. So that's the reason we've kept it that way. However, via APIs, it is possible for admins and compliance officers to actually downgrade the space or upgrade it as required.
Awesome. So Gotham, when this is available, how are customers going to be able to turn it on?
Yeah, Frank, that's a great question. So just like most of our other features, right, it's a simple toggle within Control Hub. And like I discussed before, we allow up to like 5 classification labels, and that can be set up within Control Hub, along with the help text or description text for each classification label, and off you go. Yeah, and then once they do that, every user in the organization will then have to designate a classification for a space that they create, just like we saw in that space classification flow. Yeah.
Well, Gotham, this is awesome stuff. Well, hey, I want to thank Willette, Raj, and Gotham for joining us today. Great new capabilities for securing your remote workers. So this will all be available in the Control Hub when it's ready. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.